So, today, we're going under the hood, but we're not talking about horsepower or engine specs. We're talking about the invisible armor that's being built around your car, and just as importantly, around the entire system that creates it. It's a really fundamental shift in how we have to think about automotive security. Let's dive in. I mean, it's a fair question, right? When you think about it, with millions of lines of code, dozens of computers, and constant connectivity, modern cars are basically supercomputers on wheels. And, just like any computer, that makes them vulnerable to cyber attacks. This is the new battleground for safety. And regulators are now stepping in, and they're stepping in hard. So, to tackle this massive problem, we need a new kind of guardian. And I'm not talking about a better firewall or a stronger password. We're talking about a complete shift in how security is approached. The old rules of the road, they just don't apply anymore. Okay, so let's look at how things used to be. Traditionally, security was all about the car itself. Automakers would focus on making the vehicle's internal computers, the ECUs, as tough to hack as possible. It was a very product-focused approach. Just build a secure box and ship it. Job done. But here's the problem. What if the attack doesn't start in the car at all? What if it starts in the factory or through a software update that comes from a third-party supplier? The new way gets this. Security is no longer just about the product. It's about the entire operation. We're talking about the resilience of the whole ecosystem, from the smallest supplier all the way to the automaker's corporate network. Now, this big shift from just product security to total operational resilience, it isn't just a good idea, it's actually becoming law. And a huge driving force behind this, especially in Europe, is a new regulation called NIS2. So what exactly is it? All right, so NIS2, that's the Network and Information Security Directive 2, officially became law across the EU in October 2024. Now, the key phrase you need to pay attention to here is essential entities. This is an absolute game changer. The law basically reclassifies automakers and their most important suppliers to be on the same level of importance as, say, the power grid or hospitals. It demands a company-wide approach to risk. This isn't just about car safety anymore, this is about national security. So how does this all work in practice? Well, NIS2 really forces three huge strategic shifts. First, the rules go deep, deep into the supply chain, holding even smaller software providers totally accountable. Second, it forces companies to break down their internal walls. The security for the factory floor, the corporate IT network, and the car itself, they all have to be treated as one single interconnected system. And third, it mandates insane speed in reporting incidents, which, as you'll see, requires a whole new level of automation. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this is a European thing, why should I care? But trust me, that would be a big mistake. NIS2 is just one really important piece of a very complex and tightening global web of auto security regulations. Let's just take a quick look at how this is playing out. In the EU, they're creating what some people are calling a triple shield, with NIS2, the Cyber Resilience Act, and another standard called UNR 155. It's creating by far the strictest market in the world. Meanwhile, the US is really zeroing in on supply chain defense, and China is rolling out its own powerful national standards and data laws, which forces any company that wants to operate there to build a totally localized compliance system. The takeaway here? Every major market is tackling this, just with a slightly different strategy. And believe me, the stakes could not be higher. This is not just about some compliance paperwork or paying a fine. For a component supplier anywhere in the world, failing to meet these new standards means you could be completely locked out of the entire European market. The economic pressure here is immense, and it's forcing a truly global shift in how this industry works. So, with all this massive regulatory pressure, how is the industry actually responding? What are the new tools and processes being built inside the auto factory to meet these pretty intense new demands? Okay, one of the most critical new tools you're going to hear a lot about is something called an SBOM, which stands for Software Bill of Materials. At its core, it's just a detailed, structured list of every single piece of software that makes up a component. We're talking everything from open source libraries to proprietary code. It's all about one thing: transparency. The easiest way to get your head around it is like this. An SBM is basically a mandatory ingredient list for your car's software. Before, an automaker might buy a black box of code from a supplier with no idea what was inside. Now, these new rules demand that you know every single ingredient in that box, so you can immediately check if any of them are vulnerable to a new threat. The second big evolution is in how companies assess risk. Gone are the days of a one-time check on a spreadsheet during development. We're moving to something called continuous Terra. Think of it like a living, breathing security system for the car. The moment a new vulnerability is discovered anywhere in the world, this system automatically checks if any of your car's software ingredients are affected and instantly recalculates your risk. It's a shift from a static snapshot to continuous live monitoring. And why is all this automation so incredibly important? Well, because of numbers like this one, 24. Under these new EU rules, companies have just 24 hours to issue an early warning after they become aware of a major cyber incident. There is simply no way to do that manually. No chance. You have to have automated systems for detection, for analysis, and for reporting. The pressure is really, really on.
Look, putting all of this into practice is a monumental task. The industry is facing some absolutely massive hurdles, but thankfully, there are clear blueprints emerging for the path forward.
The challenges really boil down to three main things. First, you've got this deep, complex supply chain with smaller, black box suppliers who just aren't set up for this kind of transparency. Second, engineering teams are suffering from what you could call audit exhaustion. They're just buried under the overlapping demands of all these different regulations. And finally, you have the classic problem of silos, where the IT folks, the factory team, and the vehicle engineers don't really talk to each other effectively. But here's the cool part. For each of these hurdles, a strategic blueprint is taking shape. To deal with those black box suppliers, automakers are using the power of their contracts, making SBMs a non-negotiable part of doing business. To fight audit exhaustion, they're building single, unified management systems that act as the single source of truth for all the regulations, which cuts down on duplicate work. And to break down those silos, they're creating fused, cross-functional security centers, a kind of mission control that sees the whole picture, from an IT breach to a weird signal from a car halfway around the world. It's all about creating one unified, proactive defense system. And that brings us to our final thought. These new regulations are a monumental step forward, no doubt. They're forcing an entire global industry to rebuild its approach to security from the ground up. But technology never stands still. As our cars, and even the roads they drive on, get smarter and more connected, the big question remains, will this new armor be enough to win what is very quickly becoming a cybersecurity arms race?